I have my first question to Ofer Fridman. First of all, thank you for your service, for analyzing all of those Russian government websites and Telegram channels. It must have been daunting. You talked a lot about not focusing specifically on one aspect of information and instead having to discover many different pieces before you can see the overlapping themes in the content. How do you approach this work? What did it take you to understand where to focus and how to filter out the general themes? How we can use this approach when it comes for us to learning the bigger picture before we can analyze the impact of communications? Thank you.
Yeah, so I already accused academia for not doing the right job. But I think it has to be solved by more collaboration. And that collaboration can come in different forms. It can come bottom-up from academia itself. It can come top-down from those who fund academia. We find we're highly specialized. One focus on Telegram and another focus on media, on kind of media monitoring or whatever. We need to bring this all together. There are several projects funded by the EU that are trying to do that. But essentially, we need to understand this collage and, more importantly, to start trying to counter it. Because although the topic of this conference is Ukraine, I think in Russian communication strategy, Ukraine is not the goal. Ukraine is the means in their information warfare for the rest of the world. We need to understand how they're using it. We need to understand through what channels, to what audiences. Unfortunately, they've been quite successful. The number of BRICS countries doubled since the beginning of the war. What happens in French Africa, we're all aware, or in other places in the global south. Practically, we need more collaboration, whether it comes bottom-up or top-down.
I have a question to you, Mr. Fridman, too. In your slide about this narrative that you distilled in military, for example, cluster, have you been seed and model with some specific narratives before, or it just pure clustering and topic modeling, and how much oversight your researchers have when they are interpreting the model's output?
As I said, this is a project that I've been involved with Debunk.org. This is the first time that we try to do bare topic. Previous alternations of this research, we do it we were looking top-down for narratives. This is bare topic analysis, bottom-up. Later on, we labeled and interpret them.
I'll take the next one myself to Carolina. If you could clarify two things you said. When you said cyber operations, Russian cyber operations prepared the battlefield. What do you mean by that? And the famous kill switch. In real time back then, 3 years ago, I had a dear colleague who was actually at the Pentagon. So he was kind of feeding me, well, not confidential information, but his anxiety. One of the greatest fears was that the Russians would be able on day one to basically have Ukraine go dark, kill the internet, literally. Is that what you meant, or is that something else? The follow-up question is, why couldn't the Russians do that, actually? There's a lot of things that they couldn't do on the first day, including that.
Thank you. First of all, to prepare the battlefield, I mean, Russia was present in a lot of Ukrainian networks. And Microsoft was there and helped them discover those intrusions. For example, they hacked into different registers so that they could map Ukrainian citizens and target them specifically when they occupied areas. I mean, just using cyber operations to try and undermine Ukraine's will to defend themselves, and hacking into electric grids is a typical example of that. You prepare the battlefield, but when you're actually, and this brings me to the second question of why they couldn't make Ukraine go black completely, it's much more difficult. I mean, to actually get into critical information systems, it's difficult to gain access, and it's even more difficult to stay there to use it at this precise time when you need to. It's expensive, and you'll be discovered, usually. Very often when Russia engages in cyber operations, and this is a bit of the spaghetti argument. I mean, they'll try and enter a lot of systems, and they'll enter where the defenses are weak, because actually targeting a specific organization is much more difficult and takes a lot more resources. A kill switch, I mean, when I talked with my colleagues who are IT experts, because I work at a government agency that is 80% of them are engineers and technical researchers. And when I talk to my colleagues who are IT experts, I mean, they use kill switch in a different way. But usually the way we talk about kill switch is something that a country can use when they're attacked from the outside, or an organization that's attacked from the outside. And then you cut your connections with the outside just to protect your own system. But Russia, I mean, first of all, I don't think their kill switch is actually functioning yet the way they would want to. But as I said, I think it was always about protecting themselves from political unrest rather than the functionality.
I would have two questions to Karolina Pallin. Very good presentation. And you said that Russia was not prepared for the cyber attacks. Is it now prepared for that? What they changed, improved? Can we somehow make them more vulnerable? And the second question, you said, and I agree with you, that the sovereign internet is not sovereign, it's not controlled. But the frustration that we have, for example, how to reach Russian audience, right? Because, okay, they blocked Instagram at the beginning of war. When I was talking to my journalist colleagues from Russian independent media, they were saying, okay, we are saying them that there is a war, that Russians attacking, they are killing, torturing, etc. But it doesn't matter. People knows that very well. So that's why they get rid of, okay, we don't need to have blocking Instagram, because people does not care in Russia about what is going on in Ukraine. But also to Ofer, I would have one question, because you said that they are picturing on the official sides that the war is very far away from Russians. But how about Ukraine? Because my colleague journalist, Polish journalist, he said that when he looked at the Russian propaganda, Russian TV, the impression is that Russia is surrounded by Ukraine. All the time, Ukraine is on the topic. So on one side, you were elaborating the website, but how about the propaganda network? Thank you.
No, Russia was not prepared. I think it didn't really enter their minds that Ukraine would be so skillful as they were. And also the whole thing about the cyber criminal community breaking down, I think that was also news for them, and not very pleasant news. Cybercriminality is still a major problem for Russia, and I don't think it will go away. They haven't been able to rectify that, but they are introducing their own operative systems, especially when it comes to government authorities. They're developing their own IT security software. They are getting more control of the situation, definitely. I'm trying to track whether they are changing their thinking so that they would focus more on functionality. Because, I mean, part of this internet sovereignty legislation actually reduces functionality, because all the internet service providers are forced to install equipment to filter content, and this actually makes the internet work slower, and Russia stands before a huge challenge when it comes to building the next generation of infrastructure for the internet, because we use more and more data year on year, and Russia will have to build more infrastructure at a time when they just don't have the money, and they don't even have they haven't decided on frequencies for 5G and so on. All of these are challenges that threaten to, I think, overwhelm Russia. I definitely don't see them building their own hardware. They built their own Yota phone. I don't know if you heard about that, their own smartphone. It was basically a number of components imported and put together inside Russia, and then they put a sticker on "Made in Russia." And following the Yotaphone's life in Russia, I mean, I looked at the comment field at one time in RBK, if it was Kommersant, and someone wrote that, does anyone have a Yotaphone? The only ones I see have them are grannies of people who are state employed. I mean, I don't see them getting very far there. They're going to be dependent on Chinese software and Chinese hardware, which is a major problem for them. How to reach a Russian audience? It will become increasingly difficult, especially if they learn more about blocking VPNs, which they are doing. But I would venture that the main problem is not the technical side to it. The main problem is that Russians do not want to hear what you want to transmit about Ukraine. I often get this question, what can the EU do? It doesn't matter how much you send this information into Russia. If Russians do not want to listen, then it makes no sense. And actually, I'm very inspired by Peter Pomerantsov's latest book. He argues that, you need to talk about things that Russia wants to hear, and then you can perhaps target other things in Russia that they're unhappy with, but they're not unhappy with what Russia is doing in Ukraine, I think. And the people who already have VPNs, I mean, they're not the people that we need to convince.
Just to to continue Peter Pomerantsov here, you need to say what they want to hear and not what you want to say. This is the key in any CIUS. The problem is not technological, the problem is psychological. Currently, they don't want to hear what we want to say. That's the problem. Now, about your comment about TV, well, because of the short of time, I did not have time to present another piece of the collage, which was Russian TV, which is completely different sort of communications, completely different audiences, different from Telegram and different from official websites, etc., which says something differently. So part of the exercise, what we did, we transcribed the TVs and run it again to per topic. And we want to say what they say about Ukraine. Apparently, they don't speak a lot about Ukraine. They speak about special military operation and how they are surrounded by the West. And the special military operation is not actually against Ukrainians. It's against the West. In most of their communications, kind of on TV, and again, TV by itself, it's a collage. We need to separate between weekly shows with Solovyov and other stars, to daily news, which are more concrete and different. Obviously, all, particularly news, they do follow Metodichka, which is kind of clear guidance from above, what to say and how to present things. They don't talk too much about Ukraine. The fight in the war, so the special military operation in Ukraine is against the West, and the West is surrounding us. There's much less talk about the fighting against the Ukrainian people. This is reserved for the weekly shows. So yes, you're completely right. It's not there because kind of we did this research. I didn't have time to present it, but it's a part of the collage, and we need to understand it as a whole. As you've seen, the websites, the official Kremlin communications, they're not talking about the war.
I have a question to Ofer Fridman. You were talking about Russian informational warfare. In your opinion, how is it going currently? Did they succeed in it? And if yes, what West should do to counter the informational warfare started by Russia? Thank you.
First of all, I did not mention in 20 minutes of my presentation the term information warfare. I was speaking about communication strategy. Russian communications. This is an important difference. We need to be very careful with the terms that we use, because if we use them correctly, it means that we understand them, and if we use them incorrectly, it means that we don't understand them. About your question, the war in Ukraine is the means, it's not the goal in the information, in the communication strategy around the world. I think this is what we need to understand. This is what we currently, the West, struggles to understand and struggles to act. We do better in trying to understand it. We do much worse in trying to do something about that. If we look since the beginning of the war, as I said, Russian attempts to convince the rest of the world not to love Russia. They are not in a soft power exercise, but to descend the West and disconnect from the West and look for alternatives to be highly successful. To convince the rest of the world that democracy is failing, that it's the Western fault. If we're looking at the public opinion polls, which currently the only way to try and measure the impact of information operations, if we're looking for the global south, we are losing there. And they use in Ukraine in their communication trying to undermine the trust given by global south in the Western institutions, in the Western countries, etc. What we need to do, I think, first of all, we need to understand that what is happening in Ukraine, physically happening in Ukraine, but virtually is happening around the world. Although on the ground is the battle for Ukraine, there is a worldwide, global battle in information space for the future of the global order. And we need to start fighting it to increase our focus a little bit, because currently now it's all focused on Ukraine.
Well, I want to thank our speakers for a great panel. Carolina from Sweden, Ofer from London, UK, leading the fight now this week. Yes, yes, with the Prime Minister Starmer.